Moving to a new city is daunting, especially when you're alone. The unfamiliar streets, the distant lights, and the overwhelming silence can make you feel like you're lost in a sea of anonymity. Despite the initial fear, I was excited about the opportunities in New York City. The city that never sleeps promised endless possibilities, and I was eager to dive into its vibrant energy. Finding an affordable apartment was tough, but I lucked out with a great place in Brooklyn. The search was exhausting, filled with countless viewings and rejections, but finally, I found a cozy spot that felt like home. The only catch? I needed a roommate. Living alone in such an expensive city wasn't an option, so I started the hunt for someone to share the space with. I browsed through countless profiles hoping to find someone compatible. Then, I met Ben. We decided to meet at a coffee shop, and from the moment we started talking, I knew he was the right choice. He was friendly, funny, and we shared similar interests. We instantly clicked. It felt like I had known him for years, and our conversations flowed effortlessly. Ben moved in a week later, and things couldn't have been better. We spent the first few days arranging the apartment, making it our own little haven in the big city. We had movie nights, cooked together, and explored the city. Every weekend was an adventure, discovering new places and making memories. He was the perfect roommate, and I was glad to have him by my side in this new chapter of my life. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day, and I felt truly fortunate. Little did I know, this harmonious beginning was a prelude to a nightmare. The signs were subtle at first, but they soon became impossible to ignore. A nightmare that would make me question my sanity and leave me forever scarred. The once warm and welcoming apartment turned into a place of fear and uncertainty, and my life was never the same again. Ben was an accountant, organized and meticulous. He always kept his things tidy, a stark contrast to my more laid-back approach. He was quiet, often spending nights reading in his room. I, on the other hand, enjoyed the city's vibrant nightlife. Our differences, however, never caused friction. We respected each other's space and routines. "Hey man, big day at work, do you mind if we keep it down tonight?" Ben would ask, his voice always polite. I never minded. His calmness was almost contagious, a soothing presence in our bustling city life. I felt comfortable, safe even, with Ben around. A sense of normalcy I craved in this unfamiliar city. But normalcy, as I would soon learn, can be a deceptive illusion. The first sign of something amiss was subtle. A faint scratching sound coming from Ben's room late at night. I brushed it off as mice. The building was old, after all. Then, things started to vanish. Small items at first. A pen, a bottle opener, a sock. I'm not the most organized person, so I blamed my absent-mindedness. But when my watch, a gift from my grandfather, disappeared, I knew something was wrong. I searched everywhere, tearing through my belongings, my frustration growing. "Hey Ben, have you seen my watch, the one Grandpa gave me?" I asked, my voice laced with concern. He looked up from his book, a blank expression on his face. "Can't say I have," he replied, his tone nonchalant. His indifference was unsettling. The scratching sounds from Ben's room intensified, growing louder with each passing night. They were no longer faint, but loud, persistent, like claws on hardwood, echoing through the silent house. One night, unable to bear the noise any longer, I knocked on his door, my knuckles trembling as they made contact. "Everything all right, Ben?" I asked, my voice betraying my unease. Silence greeted me, thick and suffocating. Then a soft thud, as if something heavy had dropped to the floor, breaking the stillness. "Ben?" I called out again, my heart pounding in my chest. Still no response. I tried the doorknob, locked. Panic began to set in. Fear gnawed at my insides. Something was terribly wrong. My mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. I lay awake that night, the scratching sound a tormenting soundtrack. Then I heard it, a sound that made my blood run cold. A whisper, barely audible but undeniably real, cutting through the darkness like a knife. It seemed to come from Ben's room, seeping through the walls, chilling me to the bone. The whisper carried a sense of dread. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice sent shivers down my spine. It was as if the house itself was alive, breathing in the darkness. Section 5. Growing Paranoia and Fear. Days turned into weeks, each one more unsettling than the last. The whispers persisted, growing louder, more frequent. They seemed to mock my fear, toying with my sanity. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a constant state of dread. I was a prisoner in my own home, too terrified to confront the unknown entity that shared my space. My once welcoming apartment now felt cold, oppressive. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners of my eyes, and every creak of the floorboard sent my heart racing. I started seeing things, fleeting glimpses of movement that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Was I losing my mind? Or was something sinister at play? Section 6. The night everything changed. One night the scratching reached a fever pitch. It was no longer confined to Ben's room but seemed to be everywhere, surrounding me, closing in. I lay in bed, paralyzed by fear, as the whispers morphed into guttural growls echoing through the apartment. Then, silence. A silence so profound it was deafening. I held my breath, my body trembling, waiting for the inevitable. That's when I heard it. A blood-curdling scream. It came from Ben's room. I jumped out of bed, adrenaline momentarily overriding my fear. I raced to his door, pounding on it with all my might. "Ben! Ben! Are you okay?" I shouted, my voice hoarse with terror. No response. Only the echo of my own fear reverberated through the silent apartment. Section 7. Confrontation and Denial. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was happening. I grabbed my heaviest book and smashed it against the doorknob. The wood splintered and the door swung open. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the streetlights outside. I fumbled for the light switch, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was empty. Ben's bed was stripped bare, his belongings gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. I stumbled out of the room, my mind reeling. Where could he be? What was happening? I needed answers, and I needed them now. I picked up my phone to call the police, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. Just then, I heard a key turning in the lock. The door creaked open and Ben walked in, a tired smile on his face. The room was dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls as the light flickered. "Hey man, sorry I'm late." "Work was crazy," he said, his voice as calm and collected as ever. It was as if the chaos of the day had no effect on him. I stared at him, my mouth agape, my phone slipping from my grasp. The shock of seeing him here now was overwhelming. He didn't seem to notice my shock. His demeanor was too relaxed, too normal for the situation. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," he chuckled, hanging his coat on the rack. His laughter echoed eerily in the room. "But, your room, the scratching, the whispers," I stammered, my words jumbled and incoherent. He frowned, a look of genuine confusion on his face. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. His eyes searched mine for answers. I pointed to his room, my voice trembling. The fear was palpable, making my hand shake uncontrollably. "Your room." It was empty. I heard a scream. The memory of the scream sent shivers down my spine. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. The gesture was meant to be comforting, but it only heightened my unease. "Look, you've been working too hard. You need some rest," he said, his voice soothing. But there was something off, something I couldn't quite place. But his touch sent chills down my spine. It was as if his hand was made of ice. His eyes, once warm and friendly, now held a cold, unsettling glint. It was a look I had never seen before, and it filled me with dread. I glanced around the room nervously, trying to make sense of the situation. The shadows seemed to grow darker, more menacing. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. Something was very wrong, and I needed to figure out what it was. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second feeling like an eternity. Time seemed to slow down as the tension in the room grew. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but the fear was too strong, too overwhelming to ignore. I knew I had to confront him, to get to the bottom of this. Gathering my courage, I looked him in the eye and asked, "What really happened tonight, Ben?" I knew then that I couldn't stay in that apartment a moment longer. Something was terribly wrong, something I couldn't explain. I grabbed my jacket and rushed towards the door, ignoring Ben's calls behind me. "Where are you going? What's going on?" he shouted, but his voice seemed distant, muffled. I didn't look back. I ran through the night, the city lights blurring around me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from that apartment, from Ben. The scratching, the whispers, the scream. It all came crashing down on me, threatening to consume me. I had to escape the horror that had become my reality. I spent the next few days crashing at a friend's place, my mind still reeling from the experience. I tried to make sense of what had happened, to rationalize the unexplainable. Had I imagined it all? Was I going crazy? I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that I could never go back to that apartment. I tried contacting Ben, but his number was disconnected. His social media accounts had vanished. It was as if he had never existed. I scoured the internet for any mention of similar occurrences, for any explanation that could ease my tormented mind, but I found nothing. I was alone with my terror, haunted by the memory of my time with the perfect roommate who wasn't who he seemed. Years have passed, but the memory of that experience still lingers, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of the ordinary. I never found out what happened to Ben, or what truly transpired in that apartment. Some questions I've come to realize are better left unanswered. I've moved on with my life, but I'll never forget the terror I felt, the chilling realization that the person I thought I knew was a stranger, a phantom. And every time I hear a faint scratching sound, every time I feel a chill run down my spine, I'm transported back to that time, to that apartment, to the haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we let into our lives.